Like we have other high level and professional athletes who come and they're so used to being the best that then when they're new at something, it's been maybe 10 years since they've been bad,
Mm,
and it's
yeah.
like, and it, again, it rubs against their ego a little bit. And like that, I mean, that's what I felt in jujitsu. It's like, someone be choking me and I'd be like, as I'm blacking out, I'd be like, but I can do a one-arm handstand. And you can't, or, or like I
Yeah.
did an ultra run when I was doing a lot of CrossFit, and all these great runners pass me and they clearly see me and they're like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
It's totally wrong shoes on. Uh, and I wasn't wearing nipple tape either. But they'd pass me, and in my head, I'd be like, I can deadlift so much more than you.
Yeah.
It didn't help me at
That's
that
weird how that
moment.
comes out, though. I've
Yeah,
had that too.
it's so odd, man. It's like it's unstoppable.
Yeah.
The ego will
Yeah, it's
always be
human.
screaming in your ear that
This is
either
where-
you're not good enough or you're better
That's
than.
actually a really good point. It's always going to be there. It's just
Yeah.
whether or not you listen to it.
Yeah.
And how do you shut it up? That's maybe for another day. But
Yeah, who
that's
knows?
like actually something that we've been super interested in the last few years that we don't really talk about that much,
No.
but is like that internal practice of the stillness work, or like people would refer to it more like as a meditation thing. But that's an interesting one. That's, I think, been very helpful
Yeah.
on a lot of ways, but at the same time, just like a lot of other elements, like in parkour or like in what we're doing, it's like, how do you really know? Like, what are you judging yourself against? And you're like, am I getting better, or am I like getting, like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing. That's one of the weird things with all of these things in general. Like, yes, you can win a parkour competition, and yes, we can help people win a competition in another field or something like that. But in general, it's like, how do you know if you're getting better? Like, you as somebody who's realizing, shit, like I'm getting a little bit older, I can't be doing the same insane stuff I was doing. So then you sit there and you're like, but then am I getting better? Right? So there's this weird thing that that's why I think the sitting work and the stillness work is very important, because you can actually at least have time, you can reflect on it at least, and you can ask those questions of yourself, because that's been the hardest thing for, I think, the majority of us, to be like, what am I really doing this for? I understand, like, yes, I want to be a more generalist, movement practitioner, but in reality, it's like, where am I really going with all of this? Because at a certain point, and this is like where I keep coming back to with our students having these conversations, is like, am I doing this just for the physical thing? Or am I doing this because I'm trying to create like a better, I'm trying to create a better person out of all these people that are around us? Or these are the like really the things that I'm really focusing on. And Zach and I have this conversation like for hours. It's like, what are we really doing it for?
Yeah.
I know. And like, how do you get people to realize these things about them? And is it like the movement practice or whatever it is your practice is, that's just a metaphor
Yeah.
for the rest of it? Not to sound cheesy, but it's just sort of where my brain keeps going.
I'm the same way. Yeah. It's
You
like,
can't separate them.
no.
You are the things that you do, and those things, relate to your life, like, or relate to other aspects of your life. But I should also have the ability to separate those things. Like, if I'm a lumberjack and I'm cutting down fucking trees all day, and then I go home to my wife, maybe she needs some soft loving and not some lumberjack loving.
Yeah.
Right? It's this thing, I have to separate the two, but to say that one doesn't have a relationship to the other I think it's ignorant, for lack of a better word. Like, you go to, anybody who's had a shitty job knows this.
Oh yeah.
You go home from a shitty job, and it's not like you don't leave that job there. You take it home, and it affects the people around you, maybe your kids, maybe your partner, maybe your friendships and stuff like that. You can't separate it. And like Matt said, like, a lot of what we're doing now is trying to understand those relationships from a physical and an emotional and a cognitive kind of relationship. And the stillness practice is like another kind of layer in that almost it feels inevitable at this point. It's like this onion, it seems like it has to be the next piece. And it's hard. I think it's the hardest thing we're doing right now. It's the hardest thing for our students. It's the hardest thing for me personally. Like, when I realize, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna sit still for 45 minutes now. Like, this is my plan today. If someone came over and was like, hey, do you want to do You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. You want to move this couch into my house and then move it immediately out? I'll be like, let's do that.
Yeah.
But your door's really narrow. Cool.
It's a funny thing to share it with people too. Like it's
not
we're not into, like, you know, we're not doing, there's a few people that are sitting with us on a daily basis, you know, that are doing the longer, because at the end of class we're doing, you know, like today we did some shaking, but in general we want to try to have people sitting or standing for like 10 minutes. I try to give people that time, or to work on their breathing. But like, it's a weird thing to share that. You're not, you know, like you learn how to do precision jumps. You're like, okay, I can break this down and teach you how to blah, blah, blah. This thing, you're like, wow. Like, it's intense. It's intense because I feel so self-conscious about it in general. Like,
just being still.
No, just like, just teaching. Like, am I good enough to share this experience with other people? Because it's like, I don't even know how to.
There's also,
is it intimate? You're like, bro, I don't even, it's a weird thing, you know, like because we're new to it. It's only been a few years for us. And there's people out there who've dedicated their lives to doing it. So we try to keep it simple, where we're like, here's the task for today. How about we'll just stay still for 5 minutes. See if you can, like, just don't swallow the saliva that's going to get stuck in the back of your throat. And like, if the fly lands on your face, just don't swat it. Like, that's the goal. And like, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
But it's a tough one to like really. I've shared it with some of our close students, some of the work that our teacher Duty Malka has shared with us, and it's like an intense thing to share with people.
It's super hard to do. I mean, I think I've had the most struggle with that too. Like, some of the stuff that I've done with you guys is the stillness has been absolutely the thing that I can't do the best. Like, I'm way behind in terms of being in a place where I could tell someone like, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can barely do it for the 5 minutes even.
Even if I'm on my back. Actually probably the easiest part. Sit still. That's the how. Easiest in terms of conveying the message. Yeah. Why, I think, is even harder. Yeah. And I think why is harder because from a cultural standpoint, it's hippy dippy. It's really funny because, like, I mean, and I was this way for a long time of, like, you know, you hear about, like, you know, Dalai Lama meditates and Steve Jobs would meditate and all these really successful, and they talk about how important it was for them, but part of it was just, it was so stuck in this kind of like this faux spiritual thing for me that made me uncomfortable that it kind of pushed me away. And then I don't even think Ido didn't even, when we started doing it with him and Duty, it was just kind of the thing of like, okay, try this now, sit and don't move.
For like 2 years.
Yeah, for like 2 years we did this. And it was never a discussion of anything else until like this summer. He kind of was like, okay, here's what I want you to kind of start to work on next. And the whys started to come out. So the how, I think, is a really tough barrier in the beginning that is sitting there, not moving, but it's worth trying. And honestly, like, none of us have it.
What is your like why in your best words, if you can try to approach it?
It doesn't exist anywhere else in most of our lives right now. That's the main why, I think, for most people, is because every other instant of my life, my attention is being sucked into my phone, which I've checked several times in this podcast. I'm so sorry. Or
how dare you?
How dare you? Or then listening to the news, or maybe I'm cooking, like, you know, dinner, but my train of thought is at the facility. What am I going to teach tomorrow? Stuff like that is like, you know, like, when was the last time you sat and ate and you weren't watching TV, you weren't reading the news, you weren't on the internet, you weren't listening to music, just sat and did that task only?
Or talking to another person.
Right? And like, again, like and as everything's saying is like not checking the phone, but so past that, it's like, okay, we have this movement practice. We're talking about being this kind of high level of physicality, this moving around, stuff like that. But having this negative space to place that movement in is making the movement stuff more interesting. It's also helping us out a lot. We have a student, this gal Stevie, and she's gotten so good at her hand balancing. And the other day I said, oh, well, like, you know, blah, 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 your 60-second handstand. She goes, oh, I still don't have one. I kind of always fall around like 30 or 40. and I don't know why. And I told her, I was like, you have 60 seconds. You don't have the attention span for 60 seconds. Like, and this is the thing of like, not getting attached to any train of thoughts that pull you away for a minute. That's the hardest part in a lot of the stillness, is like you sit and you're still, and then, you know, you end up thinking about like that class in third grade that you had with that mean teacher. Oh, what was her name? Da, da, da. Like, it just sucks you down that river of thoughts. And for a lot of people, for the handstand, they have all of the tools. They have all of the strength. Like, Stevie is definitely strong enough for it.
Yeah.
But what happens is she goes up there, handstand, fix. Oh, like after class, I have to go to the grocery store because I fall. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. So this is like one of the pieces that I mean. And I, again, like Matt said, we've only been doing this for like a very short time, like a few years. So I'm sure there will start to be more and more of these pieces that become obvious to us. But immediately for me right now, like that's where I'm seeing the benefit or the crossover, the correlation of the why.
Or even, it's very similar, but it's one of these things where if you're in a class, it's very easy, if the teacher's talking for 3 minutes, it's very easy to not get all 3 minutes of that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the byproducts of this practice too, is this thing of like, just stay on the task. And like in meditation or whatever, they'll say, like, most people say, focus on your breath. And it's just this thing of like, okay, I'm just going to literally feel what the breath is doing to me, or I'm just going to observe
listen,
that's
right?
going
it's
in. Yeah, whatever that means. Like,
yeah.
Like Zach sometimes will say it like, okay, like I'm talking, he'll explain it to me that he's observing the breath, but he's trying in his head not to say inhale and exhale. So it's not like he's not narrating it with words. He's just figuring out a way to listen to it and like observe it.
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things where you're just, like when I'm in a class, when I'm in Zach's class, nowadays I'm able to focus on what he's saying because I've daily sit down and I'm like, here's your task, sit still and just look at your breath. And so what I'm able to do as a byproduct of that practice is to listen to somebody talk, and as opposed to like the very typical thing when you're talking with someone where I would glaze, you know,
or like start looking around.
Like, all right, I got my shit.
Squirrel,
I got a thing. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah,
well, let's just wait till he's done now, and then I get to say it.
And that's like a really tough thing for I think a lot of us. And I would assume it's only going to get worse based on how we're communicating through technology.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good practice for practically. I think it's a very good practice for being able to pay attention to what people are saying, to be able to be like present in what you're doing and to appreciate it. Like a couple of years ago, I would have been sitting on the couch right now, just being like, okay, so like I'm going to go, my training is going to be, Brandon's saying something. Okay. But I have to train at 5:00. So but like now it's like, cool. I'm enjoying myself. I'm here. Like all of these things that when I'm sitting that I get used to doing, of like relaxing my abs so I can feel my breathing a little bit more. Like I've been doing that stuff, and that's just my observation of it as someone who's a beginner in that's a byproduct. I don't think that's the goal.
Yeah.
But those are just the things that we can speak to. And that's why I think it's such a tough thing to share with people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this word surrender is like a huge word in yoga and in meditation. And I can't bring myself to saying it when I'm explaining what we're going to be doing. Like I just can't, it's not,
like, if
I'm
Matt
not
said that, I'd be like, that's not Matt's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, like I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's not my voice right now. And like hopefully in a few years that will be. I just cannot say surrender. Like I just can't do it. It's just not me, and it's not my experience with that.
It would be false. And it wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be true. It's like the saying, you don't want to go and learn hand balancing from someone who can't do a handstand.
Yeah.
Right? Or anything, right?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The walk, talk the talk thing is important, I think. And I think it's interesting that it's all coming up. Like it's making me remember that that's kind of what I've been taking. I ran into these injuries, and with parkour, this is like something this is why it's so hard for me. So I was able to run literally and figuratively with this parkour career for a long time, and my attention was never tested. I never needed to endure stillness on a scale that I have now, dealing with all this energy that I used to put into anytime I wanted to go do something. I just go out and start jumping around, or I'd make an Instagram, or I'd put my creative energy into something, and I can still put it into other things. I'm putting it into the podcast and stuff like this. But what this era of not being able to, no matter how much I try to do more with whatever, I realize that's what I'm here, or that's what I've needed to learn and teach myself, is how do I sit and just be okay with that, even if it's just on like this broader scale. And I think a lot of athletes in parkour are going to be going through certain things, like it's almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder kind of thing you have to deal with a lot of people in the Army come back from the combat, and then their life is so boring compared to like what it was.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing as not having a purpose then.
It's not having a purpose, right?
When you're in an organization and you're doing that type of work and you have goals every single day, all right, our goal is to achieve this.
Yep.
Your goal within that goal is to do this and this. Like, to go from that to like, okay, I got to go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Like that, it's immensely hard. And again, it's I think this is a part of the human psyche. Now, what a lot of us have done is just set up as many distractions as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I ride my bike to and from work, and when I ride home now, it's dark and it's just TV screens on in every house. And when I lived in the Middle East, when it was dark, it was like kind of cool enough to go outside, but like, you go around the streets of Tel Aviv and like it'll be like 9 o'clock at night, and there's like 5-year-olds playing by themselves, 6-year-olds playing by themselves, like in front of their apartment complex. There's no parents. And there's people walking around in the street, or there's people playing chess outside, or there's still some connection to a community. And like, we've separated ourselves so much from that. And it's just through distractions. It's through the phone, it's through media, stuff like that. Because it feels good and it's easy.
Because if you have all that energy, it's easier to distract yourself, like you're saying, than learn how to sit and listen. Yeah. But if you don't learn how to listen or observe or whatever, sit in that stillness, it's hard to hear that purpose surface.
Yeah.
And I can rhyme.
And it's and it's also like
surface.
There's definitely, we have some close friends who are going through some interesting things, like from an emotional standpoint. Mm-hmm. And like when we do stillness work, it's like they have to literally sit and deal with all of the bullshit that is going on in their head with depression or whatever it is, anxiety, all these things that a lot of people are dealing with. They have to deal with that for 30 straight minutes of that voice, not in the back of your head when you're sitting, it's in the front of your head, like calling you every name that you would call somebody you hate. Mm-hmm. From what that voice is calling you, all of those things, and like it's an intense thing to go through that.
I think we got a door.
Someone's at the door.
You know what? We're just gonna have
surprise guest, like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
This is surprise. I think it's just a delivery, so I'm gonna go ahead and ignore it for now. All right. This is more important.
If it was the cops, it would be knocking louder in a second time, so you're good.
Yeah. Sorry for that interruption. It's okay. But such as.
I think you should get it.
Shit, maybe. Hey, you guys gonna hold this down for me real quick?
We'll talk.
I'm gonna narrate.
We'll talk.
What a terrible podcast.